Hi guys, and welcome to another Pushing Polygons. Today we're going to be talking about the argument that Xbox doesn't have games. Now, let me be very clear right off. I'm taking the stance that Xbox does not have any games. Now, before anybody comes after me saying, hey, you're an Xbox hater, no, I'm not. You can see the thumbnail that is going up now. I have plenty of Xboxes in my possession. I have over 150 Xbox games over the generations. I don't hate Xbox, but we've really got to talk about the systemic problems with Microsoft's management. But with that being said, guys, let's go ahead and let's get into it. With the Perfect Dark reboot having reports of being in development hell and an exodus of half of the studio, one really has to start wondering what is going on at Xbox. Perfect Dark has had the departure of two of the company's major development positions over the last several months, and half of the studio has decided to move on to other positions due to the fact that there was a conflict of interest in the studio, and this is being reported by Jez Corden over at Windows Central, stating that the company had two different ways that they wanted to develop the game, and it wasn't being dictated from the top down. Now, this isn't the first Xbox game that we have heard has had major issues in the last several months or years. I mean, Halo Infinite was in development hell. Microsoft's own Phil Spencer admitted after the Halo Infinite unveiling that they should have known better, that they should have delayed the game, and the blowback was pretty severe and let them know that they were on the wrong course. But of course, Halo Infinite still having development issues as the co-op piece of the campaign is nowhere to be seen, and we may not see it until holiday of 2022. But these are not the only games that Xbox has had trouble with over the last several years. Rare's Everwild is still sight unseen. There was an unveiling several years ago with the project reportedly being rebooted because Rare wasn't quite sure what they wanted to do with this studio. We have seen Hellblade 2, which has still not been given a release date, although we have started to see some information come out about that game with gameplay. Redfall, reportedly due out in summer of 2022. There has been no additional information on this game besides what was shown off at the Xbox showcase last year. So you have all these games and all these studios. But for a company that has so many YouTubers out there saying that the conversation or the statement that Xbox has no games is over, well, I'm sorry to say, guys, that Xbox has no games and that conversation is not over. Although Microsoft now has over 20 plus studios and their plan is to get a game out every quarter, we are not close to that yet. The first part of 2022 for Microsoft is looking pretty bare besides their third-party exclusives, Tunic being one that was, I believe, an ID at Xbox game. And, of course, before everything that was happening over in Europe, Stalker 2 was delayed until December, which pretty much moved any major games for the Xbox console out of the first half of 2022. Now, with Stalker 2, of course, being the exception, because when you've got this much crisis going on in the world. Who cares about a damn game? There are other games and other studios that should be ready to show something and have not shown anything. Now, where does this problem lie? Well, first we have to look at the management at Microsoft. Phil Spencer, CEO of gaming at Microsoft or at Microsoft Games, has been in the industry since the original Xbox. First handling their third-party development partners over in Europe with Xbox Game Studios or Microsoft Game Studios, EMEA, and then moving on to be vice president and president of Microsoft Game Studios upon the departure of Don Mattrick. Phil Spencer has handled first-party partners at Microsoft Games and should at this point, after over 20 years in the business, have an idea what makes a good game. There are reports online that Phil Spencer, even in the early days, had an extra computer in his office to farm loot for Ultima Online. Again, those are reports. I don't know the man personally, but it seems that Phil Spencer is into games. It seems that Phil Spencer is not just a suit, that he is legitimate. So for him to come out with the admission that we should have realized we weren't ready, what is going on at Microsoft? Is it really just trying to push games into Game Pass? Is it too much to ask to have a game completed, at least be feature complete upon release? We're going to do a separate video at some point, and you can watch for it, where we're talking about how much how much data Microsoft is putting on their game disc compared to Sony. But that is another conversation for a little bit later. Watch out for that one. But what is Microsoft doing? Now, the buck stops with Phil Spencer. He is the CEO. It doesn't need to go up to Satya Nadella. It goes right to Phil Spencer. He's been in the industry long enough. He's seen enough games. He knows what works, or he should know what works, but yet he is okaying some of these games to go forward. It is almost negligent in some respects to buy all these studios and then not to actually have anything. Now, of course, a lot of the games that are being built, Microsoft acquired the studios, and the studios had third-party obligations already. For Psychonauts 2 ended up on PlayStation because the company had already kick-started that game before Microsoft had bought them. Bethesda, well, some of their games were released prior to Wolfenstein 2, Doom Eternal. We should be coming up on the next round of Bethesda games. We will have to wait and see what is going on with Indiana Jones, but we do know Starfield is 11/11/2022. Rumors do persist that there is a Forza game later this year. That is sight to be seen at this point, but it goes back to the argument that a lot of people had over the 2010s during the Xbox One era. It's Halo, it's Forza, and it's Gears. We had Gears Tactics, we had Halo Infinite, we had Forza Horizon 5, and maybe we're getting Forza Motorsport. Whether they attach a number to that is irrelevant at this point, but Forza, Halo, Gears. Those have been Microsoft's first-party games that have come out and what has sustained the system over almost the last decade. You do have a very few extra titles out there, but I do consider them really irrelevant in the gaming space. And I don't mean to really say irrelevant, but as far as the console space goes, I would like to know how many people out there are actually playing these games. Let me know in the comments below if you are. But one of the games that's going to be used in the console wars is going to, of course, be Flight Simulator. Guys, I have played games on a PC for many, many years, and nobody cared about Flight Simulator. So for it to all of a sudden be cared about because it came to consoles, to me, strikes of slight... it's not genuine. I just can't see that title selling a lot, and it did go straight into Game Pass. Now, I'm not going to say Game Pass is a bad thing. Game Pass, to me, is it's a rental system. It's a way for me to try out a game and see if I want to buy it. Although, if you're making a game with the specific purpose of Game Pass, and you're making the game as a service, which is the constant drip feed of content, then maybe you're not going to complete these games. Maybe you think you actually have more time than you do. Maybe you think that you can get some income coming in from this game, and then that income can then help you pay for the rest of the development of your game. But Microsoft, if I had one piece of advice to give to you from somebody who's been gaming since the late 1980s, early 1990s, from somebody who has had a little experience managing projects and teams, you need to get the basics right. You need to be able to put the right people in place, and then to actually say to yourself, this isn't working. If you're not hitting your benchmarks and you're not hitting the quality that you are aspiring to, then you need to decide and make tough choices. Microsoft, of course, said that they learned a lot of decisions when they closed Lionhead Studios. They were trying to force them to be something that they were not, although I would argue that may not have been the case. Lionhead Studios was not a stranger to a godlike top-down strategy game. Peter Molyneux had made Black and White. It was a similar type of game, although there were different gameplay mechanics. This is what teams do. This is what studios do. There are some things that they are better at than others, but it's not like it wasn't in the wheelhouse. Lionhead also made another strategy game. Lionhead made the movies. Now, that was more of a simulation game that was on PC, but also, I believe, a Microsoft Game Studios game. Brilliant game. I just don't see what Microsoft was thinking when they shut them down. Really, all I can picture at this time is it had something to do with Fable 3 underperforming and the development of Fable Legends taking longer than expected. Moving on from that, you have ScaleBound. Now, this is the platinum game that everybody wants back. Of course, there are rumors that Microsoft was forcing them to use Unreal, and then Platinum was not proficient with Unreal. Of course, there were rumors that Platinum was putting ScaleBound on the back burner. It's really hard to say, but with the cancellation of that project and potentially the unwillingness to revisit it without set guidelines, set boundaries, then you really have to ask yourself what is going on. And the blame does not solely rest with Phil Spencer. Matt Booty, who is currently the head of Microsoft's first-party game studios, because you have to remember, Microsoft Games, the CEO position that Phil Spencer now holds, not only encompasses Microsoft Game Studios, but encompasses Bethesda Game Studios as well. And under the Bethesda umbrella, of course, you have Bethesda GameWorks, you have Bethesda Online, you have id, you have Machine Games. So you do have another set of studios, and then potentially with the Activision acquisition of $69 billion, Phil Spencer is going to have a lot of studios to withhold, and he really needs to start holding people accountable for benchmarks to be hit, for ideas to be more solid. And I understand game development is about iteration. I am not completely naive to the fact that it does take time to build games. It does take time to build technology. But Microsoft, you have had a decade to put it together. Let Starfield be your time. Don't give slack to the Bonnie Rosses of your studios. Bonnie Ross may be a great manager for a studio, be able to hire people. I mean, supposedly Bonnie brought in the current head of the Halo development project. His name at the moment is escaping my mind, but she supposedly made that call, and that was the right move. But that move wasn't made until after development was already too far down the fiery rabbit hole. More accountability needs to be put in place. More benchmarks need to be laid out so these games start getting out on time. Because if Microsoft wants to hit that 1 or 2 games every quarter, they really need to start getting their act together. If they don't, they're not going to be a viable company. And let me be clear about with what I say by viable. I'm talking about Xbox Gaming as its own company, not Xbox Gaming that is being supported by Azure, that's being supported by Windows, that's being supported by Enterprise. I'm talking about an Xbox company that, if you look at the balance sheet, they are able to support themselves and are bringing in money to keep the engine flowing. But let's get back to Matt Booty. Matt Booty is Phil Spencer's right-hand man for the Xbox Game Studios. These are all the first-party game studios that Microsoft handles in-house. These are the studios that produce Forza, that produce Halo. And Matt Booty has a very interesting history looking at his LinkedIn. Matt Booty presided over Midway Games back in the early 2000s. Of course, we all know Midway is no longer with us. Matt Booty also worked on the Windows Phone team and had games or ran their gaming division for Windows Phone. We also know Windows Phone is no longer with us. So maybe, perhaps, Matt Booty might not be the right man for the job when looking at Xbox Game Studios and the quality of games that they need to okay, the benchmarks they need to hit to actually get the job done and compete with Sony on a quality title for title. You know, and I want to go back to this last point, and I do hammer this point home. It's okay to be a games as a service. It's okay to have DLC. Back in the day, we called them expansion packs. It's okay to have extra content that is going to be coming to your game later. The point should be is make sure the base product that you're putting out does 2 things. It works. That's number 1. And the second one is that the product is fun. It works and it's fun. Those are the 2 tenets that Microsoft needs to hit. For a lot of people, they hit one of those tenets. For also a lot of people, they don't hit both. The content is either A, not there, or they try to push these games out in a manner in which the game is on fire. Microsoft, get it together. We need you at your top level in this gaming space. Guys, this has been Armand for Pushing Polygons. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And of course, if you want to see more content like this or content talking about older consoles that aren't connected online, please subscribe to this channel and do ding the bell. That way you know when videos are going up in the future. What do you think of my take on Microsoft Game Studios not having any games? Let me know in the comments below. Let's have a discussion. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching this video. Take care of each other, and I will see you in the next one.